It is cold as balls out here right now. Jesus, it is rough. And I've got a flight in at 12 o'clock, 12:30. So what time is it right now? It is 8:15. So I've got 3 hours and 45 minutes to record this video, to get this video edited, to get this video uploaded, to get all my shit packed, and to be on the road, and to get there an hour before my flight. We got a busy morning. In a previous video, we opened up with the beginning of Oliver Twist, right? Like with a section of Oliver Twist, when Oliver first met the Dodger. And in that little section, you had Oliver who escaped the workhouse and who escaped the Undertakers, right? And he takes off running, just runs for 7 days without food or shelter and no real stout clothing to protect him from the ravages of the weather. And when that happens, he settles on a little town in Barnet, right? Like this little town called Barnet. It sits under a milestone and is just sitting there freezing and really is kind of giving up. In all honesty, he's just kind of like, this is how it ends. I mean, he wanted to go to London, but he just wasn't able to make it. And the result is that halfway through, or at least while he's sitting under that milestone, he's met by a young kid from across the road named Jack Dawkins, also called the Artful Dodger. And he explains the situation to Jack Dawkins, and Jack Dawkins says, come with me, and takes him to meet a guy named Mr. Fagin. Now, when they go to London and they meet Fagin, the first thing, I guess kind of continuing from that video, when he meets Fagin, Fagin sees him and says, you look like you need a full belly and some sleep. So they feed Oliver, and then they put him to bed. Oliver just drifts off into a deep sleep. Well, the next morning when he wakes up, Fagin asks him, he says, do you want to play a game with your friends? And Oliver's like, I guess. And so Fagin goes and gets a cane, and then he gets a snuff box and a handkerchief. And he puts a snuff box and the handkerchief in his pocket. And then he gets this cane and just starts walking around in this really exaggerated, well-to-do manner, like some super wealthy man you would see walking around London any time of day. Now, while he's doing that, the Dodger and a kid named Charlie Bates run up on Fagin, bump into him, and through that process, relieve him of the snuff box and the handkerchief. Now, all the other kids around are cheering, right? Because there's more than just those two. There's all these other kids in this place that are all cheering. And it's obvious that the Artful Dodger and Charlie Bates are like the two best kids. And Oliver's cheering and Oliver's clapping and he's having a good old time. And Fagin asks him, he says, do you think you can be as nimble with your hands as these kids? If you do, you can be a very great man. Now, Oliver has no idea what being nimble with his fingers, has to do with being a great man. But Fagin is a lot older than Oliver is. And so Oliver just assumes that Fagin knows what he's talking about, that he's wise. And so for many weeks after that, Oliver stays shut up in the room of Fagin, playing this game. And he does beg to go outside, he does beg to leave, and Fagin doesn't really let him until he does. Until finally, Fagin lets Oliver go out with Charlie Bates and the Artful Dodger. Now, when that happens, the two of them are just kind of walking along the street of London when the Dodger stops him. The Dodger says, wait, hold on a second, guys. And he says, look at that guy over there. And there's this man who appears to be exceedingly wealthy walking down the road. Now, that man's name is actually Mr. Brownlow. And by the end of the story, he's probably the single most important character in Oliver Twist's life. But at the moment, he's just a guy walking down the road. Charlie Bates looks over, he sees Mr. Brownlow, and he says, yeah, man, he'll do. And so they say, Oliver, stay here. And so the Dodger and Charlie Bates go running up on Mr. Brownlow and performing the exact same stunt they did with Fagin, relieve him of his personal belongings. And in that moment, Oliver realizes what's been going on all this time. That he hasn't been playing a game, that he's been training to become a pickpocket. Now at that point, Oliver's at a crossroads. He has a choice to make. Either he can say no and run away, go back to whatever may wait for him out there, or he may say yes, cast aside his moral compass, and stay with some measure of security. But Oliver says no, and he runs away. Now, it just happens to be that as Oliver's running down the road, Mr. Brownlow realizes he's been pickpocketed, turns around, sees Oliver running, and yells, "Stop, thief!" And the whole street turns against Oliver. They snatch him up, they hand him to the constable, who takes him to the magistrate, a man named Mr. Fang, and the rest of the story unfolds. But that little segment of Oliver Twist, the significance of that little bit, highlights the ability to say no. The ability to look at somebody and just say, absolutely not. And it's important that you be able to do that in your life, right? And that's kind of the crazy thing, is when you're young, when you're in your preteen years, your teenage years, and even a little after your teenage years, when you're between the ages of 11 and, 17, it feels like your value as a human being lives and dies by the approval of the people around you. That's kind of the feeling that you get, that in high school, if they don't like you, that's the end of you. In middle school, they don't like you, that's the end of you. And I will admit, I will concede that things have changed drastically since I was in school. When I was in middle school and high school, the worst you had to worry about was getting into a fight, and even then, you hold your own. Sometimes you kick their ass, sometimes they kick your ass, whatever. You get your licks in, you get some respect, and you call it a day. But now it's a whole different beast. You guys have social media. And social media can be the greatest thing you ever discovered, or it can be a broadsword hacking away at your life. And I hope this wind isn't bothering you guys too much. But that does not deny the fact that you have to learn to say no, right? And even then, sometimes it's not confined to social approval, to expectations of your peers. For some people, it's more of just how they feel about the world around them. They don't want to disappoint people. They don't want to make people sad. But here's the important thing to remember, guys. It's not your job to make sure the world is happy, and it never was. The world got on before you, the world gets on with you, and the world will get on without you. It's your job to make sure you're happy. Now, it doesn't mean that you see the world as expendable objects, right? Like the people in the world are not baubles in your hand to be played with. You don't toy with other human beings. You take your moral compass as you have it, as you learn from your parents, as your life experiences has taught you, and you go forward accordingly. Just because, there are people who do that. They say, well, my job is to be happy. So, I'm just going to use people for my own ends because that's what makes me happy. That's a shitty thing to do. Don't be a dick. But you guys understand what I'm saying. Your job is to go out in the world and be happy, to make your own way. And so when those times come, when you feel like you can't say no, when those times come when you're afraid of what will happen when you do say no, don't worry about what people will, don't worry about how people will perceive you, right? Don't worry about them. Worry about you. They're going to keep on keeping on. You're going to keep on keeping on. At that moment, at that point in time, right then, worry about you. Do what you think is the right thing to do. And then just go forward from there. The world will be fine and you will be fine. The sun will rise, the day will go on. And everything will be okay. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. And, I will catch you all later. Peace.